everyone. My name is Angela Smart. I am the Chief Development Officer for Swope Health. Just wanted to extend a really warm welcome to the group today and to the Mayor's Committee on Reparations. We are excited to invite you into this building, the PACE KC Adult Wellness Center. PACE is a new program of Swope Health that just opened earlier this year. It stands for Programs of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. And check us out at pacekc.org. There is a full clinic downstairs and then offices in this beautiful room here. We're thrilled to always open this room up to community partners for events and training sessions. So get in touch with us if you'd like to connect on that as well. Really excited to introduce Bridget to the podium, and again, welcome and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? Good. So my name is Bridget Jones. I am a professor of pediatrics at UMKC School of Medicine. I'm a physician here in Kansas City. I practice allergy immunology and also do asthma research, and I serve on the Healthcare Commission and actually lead the Healthcare Subcommittee of the KC Mayor's Commission for Reparations. So we're really happy for you all to join us here tonight just to have a discussion about what healthcare looks like for Black Kansas City residents. What are the policies and practices that may have been led by the city that may have harmed or impacted the health of Black Kansas City residents, and then how we can move forward with repair, with reparations to address the disparities that we know exist. So to give you a little bit of background, and I don't know if you've scanned this QR code or not, but it takes you to our the Commission's webpage that will give you a lot more information about the Commission. But the Commission was voted into existence by the City Council in January of 2023, and we were seated in May of 2023. And I wanted to read a little bit from the ordinance, and I encourage you to read the ordinance. It has a lot of great information into it to justify why this commission exists. And so one of the quotes is, whereas the City of Kansas City's past actions to support and defend the institution of slavery and segregation era human rights has led to substantial disparities in wealth, health, home ownership, criminal justice, and educational outcomes for Black Kansas Cityans as compared to non-Black Kansas Cityans. Whereas Black people have historically suffered from years of inadequate health care, including lack of access to doctors and healthcare facilities in Black neighborhoods, resulting in Black people suffering disproportionately from treatable diseases. And so the Commission's duties are that we will study and develop reparation proposals for the city's review. Proposals should focus on 5 impact areas, including housing, economic development, health, education, and criminal justice. So this really sets the stage for the purpose of us being here tonight, for us to learn about the past harms and disparities impacting the health of Black Kansas City residents and the necessary repair moving forward. So we felt like a really great way for us to have this discussion and start some of this work is to view the excellent documentary that was done by Professor Kevin Willmott, who was very gracious to join us here tonight and spend time with us tonight for us to view the film and then talk about what this might mean for reparations for Black Kansas City residents. Before I introduce Professor Willmott, I'd like to recognize the members of the KC Reparations Commission that are here tonight. If you're a commission member, I see 2. If you would raise your hand so that people know who you are. And then I don't know if we have anyone here from the KC Reparations Coalition, but I just wanted to recognize them as leaders of this work for many, many years, and who helped to really get this commission seated. So we're really grateful for their leadership in all of this work. So with that, I'll introduce Professor Kevin Willmott. I'm going to read your entire bio because I want people to know all the great things that you do. Professor Kevin Willmott won an Academy Award and the BAFTA, the British Academy Award for co-writing with Spike Lee for the feature film Black Klansman. The film also won the Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival. He also co-wrote and is the executive producer of the critically acclaimed film Chirac, also directed by Spike Lee. The film is on numerous Best of 2015 lists, including Best Film and Best Screenplay by the New Yorker magazine. Award-winning films written and directed by Kevin Willmott include 9th Street, CSA Confederate States of America, The Battle for Bunker Hill, The Only Good Indian, Jayhawkers, and Destination Planet Negro. Documentaries directed by Willmott include From Separate to Equal, The Creation of Truman Medical Center, which we'll view tonight, Gordon Parks Elementary, Fast Break, the legendary Coach John McClendon, and William Allen White, What's the Matter with Kansas? No Place Like Home, The Struggle Against Hate in Kansas, and the heroic true life adventures of Alvin Brooks. He co-wrote with Spike Lee the feature film Da 5 Bloods for Netflix. The National Board of Review named Da 5 Bloods the best film of 2020. Willmott co-wrote with Trey Byers and directed the critically acclaimed feature film The 24th about the Houston riot of 1917. The film was nominated for an NAACP Image Award in 2020. Willmott grew up in Junction City, Kansas, and attended Marymount College, receiving his BA in drama. After graduation, he returned home working as a peace and civil rights activist, fighting for the rights of the poor, creating 2 Catholic worker shelters for the homeless, and forcing the integration of several long-standing segregated institutions. He attended graduate studies at New York University, Tisch School of Arts, receiving several writing awards and his MFA in dramatic writing. Willmott works full-time as a screenwriter and director and is Professor Emeritus of the University of Kansas. So with that, I welcome Professor Willmott.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you guys for coming. I want to thank Dr. Jones for inviting me. It's great to talk about these issues because when I made the film, really kind of made the film because in Truman Medical Center, they have that lobby when you first walk in. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but when you first walk into Truman Medical Center, there's a kind of in the lobby, they've got a timeline of kind of the history of the hospital. And I was talking to the CEO at that time, John, what's his name? Yeah, John Bluford, excuse me. I've seen John in a while. John Bluford, and I said, man, this would be a great film, just to kind of show the whole thing. And he said, hey, let's do that. So that's kind of how it came about. And part of why I was interested in it as a subject matter as well was when I heard about that. I grew up in Junction City. I didn't grow up in Kansas City, but I've been living in this area for about 30 years now. And when I heard about that, they had two separate hospitals. Had a General Hospital number 1 was the white hospital, and General number 2 was the black hospital. And I thought that can't be true, right? They called them 1 and 2, and then when I made the documentary, I discovered there's a tunnel underneath the ground that connected the 2 hospitals. And it was just like, as a dramatist, if I wrote that, someone would say, come on, man, really? There's a tunnel under the ground that connects the 2 hospitals? And so when making the documentary, it was kind of amazing to kind of learn the whole history of how these hospitals developed, were created, and kind of a legacy that I think we still kind of live with today. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the main points of the film, and also a few points that we don't make in the film that I kind of learned about through other movies, through this movie and other movies I've made, about kind of the legacy of healthcare and slavery specifically. So one of the big things you'll see in the film early on in the movie is that African Americans were afraid of hospitals. And they were afraid of hospitals for a lot of reasons. I know this myself personally. My father, I kind of have an interesting family. My father was 60 when I was born. My father was born in 1898. It's not my grandfather, my father. And so that's only 30-something years after slavery. My grandmother was born in 1870. And so my father had a heart attack, but he didn't want to go to the hospital. So in those days, the doctors, made house calls. So they came to our house and they treated my father, but he never went to the hospital. And that seemed we thought that was what's wrong with Dad? He won't go to the hospital. But now, when I made the film, I couldn't understand why they didn't want to go to the hospital and why he, from that period, that generation, that time, would have been fearful of hospitals. So one of the people that I think started the reasons for African Americans fearing hospitals was a doctor by the name of J. Marion Sims. Then you ever heard of J. Marion Sims? I'm sure you have. In 1840, in his autobiography, he wrote, Sims described negotiating with slave owners. He said he was a slave owner, and he was a doctor during slavery. And he said, I made this proposition to the owners of the Negroes. If you will give me Arca, was her name, and Betsy for experiments, I agreed to perform no experiment or operation on either of them to endanger their lives, and will not charge a cent for keeping them. But you must pay their taxes and clothe them. He also complained about the expenses of feeding them. So this was during slavery, they were experimenting on specifically African American women. And he goes on, he says, in addition, Arca, Betsy, and Lucy, Sims writes, I got 3 or 4 more to experiment on. And there was never a time that I could not, at any day, have had a subject for operation. But my operations all failed. This went on not for 1 year, but for 2, 3, and even 4 years. The surgeries, which was repeated again and again on the same women, 30 times of Arca, were painful. Sims wrote in his autobiography of the results of one stupid thing he tested. Lucy's agony was extreme, he wrote. She was much prostrated, and I thought that she was going to die. After she recovered entirely from the effects of this unfortunate experiment, I put on a table to examine. Sims also says that the women wanted the surgeries because they wanted to be cured. As Gamble writes, he says, we often have his word for that. And so this is all his admission. This is in his autobiography, right? So modern critics of Sims have noted that he conducted these experiments without anesthesia. Although the commission does not focus on the element of his research began during the early days of modern anesthesia. So anesthesia was kind of beginning to be available. As his defenders have noted, after perfecting the technique on black women without anesthesia, Sims went on to offer it to white women, but he treated white women with anesthesia. So the fear blacks had of hospitals was based on fact. And the fear turned into something of a kind of an urban legend, something that was called night doctors. Has anybody heard of night doctors before? Night doctors is, I hope to eventually make a movie about it. Night doctors is a really kind of thing that, it's almost kind of like those old movies you saw when, people in my generation, we saw those old movies like the Body Snatchers, where people go to graves and they dig graves up and they experiment on corpses. Well, they were kind of doing that except on living people, specifically African Americans. Johns Hopkins Hospital and the New Orleans Charity Hospital are noted originators of student night doctors. Cadavers used by Johns Hopkins University were highly disproportionate African American. 2/3 of the cadavers they worked on were African American, to the surrounding proportion of the population. And Charity Hospital was known for multiple racist incidents. Many African Americans were disturbed, distrusted the hospital, or found older generations to avoid them. That's the thing I was talking about with my father. a quote that is in the book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. You guys have probably heard of that book. She writes in the book, you'd be surprised how many people disappear in East Baltimore, Maryland's a slave state, when I was a girl. I'm telling you, I lived here in the 50s, and when they got Henrietta, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere near Hopkins, when it got dark and we were young, we had to be on the steps or Hopkins might get you. So the whole fear of Johns Hopkins Hospital was that they would snatch you and they would experiment on you. And then they had another thing, another fear that black people had. And the needlemen were somebody with anesthesia or some kind of knockout thing that would walk up to you in the street and give you a shot, knock you out, and take you off, and then sell you to be experimented on someplace. It says the needlemen would poke unsuspecting individuals in the arm with a poison needle. After death, records would be falsified to give other explanations for the victim's passing. I'm sure the needlemen would, I'm sure don't go out much at this time of year. So you take a chance when you're just walking down the street. The needlemen is everywhere. They always come around in the fall, and they're around about March. You see the needlemen in medical students from the Charity Hospital trying to get your body to work on. That's because stiffs are very scarce at this time of year. So this was African Americans at the time giving testimony to their fears and to things they had witnessed, to things they had seen, to things they experienced. The black bottle men would offer African American patients a black bottle of medicine, leading to their death shortly afterwards. The bottle is now thought to contain a mixture of quercetin and milk of magnesium, which they properly administrated worked for a common laxative at the period. Incorrectly used, though, could cause severe side effects. So in the film you're going to watch tonight, you're going to see a story I found from the Kansas City Star about a black man who jumped from a city ambulance because he was afraid to go to the General Hospital here in Kansas City. And he was more afraid, she was shot in the back, but he was more afraid of the hospital than he was of dying from the bullet wound. So he leaped from the hospital so he wouldn't be taken to the hospital. Crazy story. In 1903, there were 5 hospital beds designated for blacks in Kansas City and 18,000 black citizens. So there was 5 beds and 18,000 black citizens. That's in 1903. The flood of 1903 gives the black community the old hospital. So there was an old hospital that served the whole community. It kind of got old and run down, and the flood happened, and Kansas City was really decimated. It affected everybody. So they had a lot of sick people. They had to have martial law. They had to bring the military in to deal with the whole issue. So they had to build a new hospital. So they gave African Americans the old hospital. Okay? So the flood of 1903 gives the black community the old hospital when whites get a new one in 1905. Even with that, black doctors are not allowed to serve on the staff of their own black hospital. So they gave this old hospital to serve the black community, but black doctors are not allowed to serve in that hospital. Dr. Edward Perry, who created Wheatley Providence Medical Center, the ruins of it is, I think it's on 18th Street. Dr. Perry and Dr. Thomas Unthank are the two. Thomas Unthank, Dr. Unthank is the father of black doctors in Kansas City. You'll see that. Dr. Perry is right there with him. And those two men created health care for African Americans in Kansas City. And you'll see their struggle, played out in the film. Black student doctors, or those trying to become certified, this would have been in the 30s, 40s, into the 50s, and even to the 60s to some degree. Black student doctors, or those trying to become certified or receive certain training, had to go undercover to get that education. So there was no way that black doctors couldn't get into programs to be certified. To be certified as an anesthesiologist, as a surgeon. They couldn't get into those. So what they did, and you'll hear a story from a black doctor, Dr. Hedgepath, who tells his story in the film. Doctors went so far as to posing as janitors in the hospital to look over the shoulder of other doctors and get the training they needed. So they would be in the room with a mop, posing as a janitor, watching a procedure done on a patient. And the white doctor that's lying in the pose as a janitor, they're in it together. So the white sympathetic doctor saying, come in, I'll let you pose as a janitor, you can watch me do this. Amazing. And of course, the tunnel that I mentioned at the very beginning. The tunnel is I think what you'll see in the film is one of the most symbolic realities of this discrepancy between black and white healthcare. So literally you have, two hospitals, one white, one black, and a tunnel that links them together. And the black hospital was actually built later than the white hospital. So the black hospital was built in the 30s, and it was kind of new. So when it was open, it had certain things that the white hospital didn't have. So what happened was the white hospital, through the tunnel, would go to the black hospital, take supplies, take various equipment, take whatever, and go back to the tunnel and put them and use them in the white hospital. And you'll see Dr. Lewis Peterson, Dr. Peterson's, they talk about that specifically in the film. The number of African Americans who died, received improper care, who suffered unnecessarily by the hands of white supremacy and later segregation, and the fights for equality is hard to measure. One thing is for sure, the pain and suffering it caused is beyond measure. For nearly a century, medical malpractice that was performed specifically on the black community of Kansas City, Missouri. So I think the film will hopefully show you in general a way to maybe measure the issues that came about from this dual health system. And the fact that we still have people living today that were born in general number 2 and experience this gentleman right here. And that this is living history. And it's really important for us to understand the details as much as possible of what happened with their care. And there's a 1,000 stories. I mean, I just barely scratched the surface of the film. But one of the things I learned from making the film was that there was far more stories out there that need to be told, that we should understand, that we can learn from, and that I think, give reference to the meaning of the meeting tonight, which is how much damage, how much pain, how much suffering, what was stolen, and how to measure that. I think one of the most interesting figures was the 5 beds for 18,000 citizens. I think that's one of the figures I was able to find from that period. So, but without further ado, maybe we should watch the film.
And so I hope it'll help us kind of have a discussion tonight. We would love to hear about people in the audience, your own experiences in Kansas City, your healthcare experiences, and kind of what you see as the need to close the health disparity gap. So this is the time where we want to open it up for some discussion. I don't know if Professor Willmott wants to say any additional words.
I'll let you do your thing.
Okay. Or if we have any commissioners that want to give any comments, but this this is really supposed to be a time for us to hear from the community about the work that we have to do as far as telling the city what the harms have been and where we should move forward.
I have a question regarding the current status, the current disparity between African Americans and other ethnic groups here in Kansas City, the health disparities. Do we have stats on that?
So I'll just give my knowledge as far as the city statistics. I know that the health department collects those type of data, and we have those type of data from for various health conditions. One of the slides I was going to show, I don't know if you can put up the slide, it kind of reflects what you're saying is these are data that we have. Let me just keep it on this one for now. We're just back, yeah. You want to just, so I'll just show you this figure here. These are data that we have that we've collected from Children's Mercy that show the number of children who attend Children's Mercy an ER visit for asthma more than 5 times a year. So each individual red dot is a child here in Kansas City who's gone to the emergency department for an asthma flare-up. And so one of the things that I think is striking that kind of helps lead us to think about where are the harms that lead to disease, if you click the next button and show this map here. Everybody knows what this map shows, correct? This is a map of redlining. So these are areas where in the film, it talked about how there were areas of disinvestment, and those maps were shown that said the Negro area and the white area, and so the red areas are the areas that there was no investment in building those neighborhoods and providing safe and healthy neighborhoods. And so you can see today that the areas where you have all the red dots are the same areas that were historically redlined. And you could probably put any chronic disease here and see the same thing. Heart disease, cancer, COPD, any chronic disease. And so what we know as far as diseases like asthma, if you click the next one, there are lots of different factors that lead to why you have asthma. It's not really related to that individual person. We've not found like the magic gene that causes asthma. Most of the factors that lead to asthma and poor asthma outcomes are things that are in your environment. So when you think about redlining and the disparities that we see, it's things like that we're talking about at the end of the film. I think one of the main things is access to healthcare. If you think about who's serving Black Kansas City residents in Kansas City, who's serving more underserved populations, we have a lack of access. Geographically, we have a lack of access. If you think of one side of the city versus the other, you have access to healthcare providers, even access to pharmacies, but the other things that you have as far as making sure that your environment is safe and healthy, that you have the opportunity to live a healthy life, or things like having green space, not having a highway built right beside your home where there's diesel exhaust fumes. You have access to healthy foods. You have grocery stores. You have fresh food that's easy to get to. And you have potentially less stress exposure. So one of the things that we're learning is that stress exposure, chronic stress, impacts people at a biological basis, and that can lead to more inflammatory conditions like asthma. So I think this is one way to think about it. I know your question was about statistics, but yeah, I think there's statistics that we have in the city that show the disparities, and I think our need is to link that back to tangible areas that can be addressed within the community to address those disparities.
Good evening, everyone. I'm from St. Louis, and I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and I moved here for work last year. And I commend you all for the work and commitment that you have put forth here. I mean, going through the history has been really eye-opening. And of course, in St. Louis, you know about Homer G. Phillips and the namesake, and the history behind that, as well as the nurses and the missing babies. All of that culminated into work that still needs to be done in St. Louis. And so I've always thought that our cousin on the other side of the state is light years ahead. So I commend you all and encourage the residents to really get behind this and you know, take advantage of it. I do live here, downtown St. Louis, Kansas City. Thank you.
Thank you. Say your comment.
So I wanted to make a comment about the QLID, Quality Life Improvement District, that the city of Kansas City created a couple of years ago because of a study that the Kansas City Health Department has really been doing over 20 years, this study of low life expectancy zip codes. So the comment is just wanting to ensure that the commission is linking with the Kansas City Health Department regarding the QLID, because there's supposed to already be a foundation for work that is supposed to be done to correct those low life expectancy zip codes, which I'm sure correlate with the map. 64128 is the lowest life expectancy zip code. I live in 64132, that is one of them, one of the low life expectancy zip codes. But the QLID is made up of 30 some odd parks that the city of Kansas City has said that the goal is to enhance these parks within the QLID to get residents out and increasing their life expectancy through these parks that are within the QLID. So I just wanted to make sure that residents are aware of this Quality Life Improvement District and that the commission is working with the health department to build on that.
My comment is, what is the plan? This is good to get all this history. And right now, I don't think we really went too far. I do a lot of research for reparations, and right now, black women die at a higher rate giving birth to a child than any other group in America. My grandmother was a midwife, and in the 1800s, she was a slave, and she delivered 335 babies, white babies. Didn't lose now one. So I'm a reparation man. I'm for repair. We talk this beautiful history to learn, but has it really changed for us? Looking for a change. See, we got a movement going with reparations, but are we truly moving? Or are we just running in place? See, we're gonna have to get it together, because right now, a tragedy hit about a week ago is gonna affect the whole world. Gonna shake the whole world up. And we ain't got much time, y'all. We gotta get our feet moving. Or we gonna die. And if we die, this whole country dies. It's in our hands. As I say always, wherever I go, I'm about reparation. Reparation is to repair something that has been broke and broken. See, we're not poor, but we're broken. We're the richest of the rich. We spend $2.2 trillion in black into American economy. It don't circulate nowhere in our neighborhood. We need our own schools. We the only ones that can teach us. We need our own hospitals. We the only ones that can heal us. We need our own land so we can grow our own food. They poisoning us. We gotta get realistic with this. It's playtime is over. This was beautiful. This was all beautiful, this history we learned. Because a lot of people don't know nothing about it. Learned a lot tonight. I am the grandchild of a documented slave. My great-grandfather was a white man, Joseph Scruggs, who raped my little great-grandmother, and he produced a product. She was 12 years old and he was 28 years old. He immediately got product. Made in the USA, made in America. Didn't have to buy that one. This is why I'm so passionate about it. We gotta get our minds together, brothers and sisters. And you white folks here, I'm gonna point you out. If you ain't for reparation, you might as well leave. And you black folks here that don't want to stand on reparation and are scared or fearful, you might as well leave. Because we gotta get boots to the ground and get to marching forward. We need our land, we need the money to cultivate our land, and we need to have our own hospitals, our own schools, everything like that. Now y'all might think this old man a little bit militant, a little bit passionate, a little bit off kilter, but I'm not. Because he's watching just a few months what's gonna happen in this country. It's coming, you better get ready.
Thank you. Let me go back here and then. Thank you.
The question was, how many of those people were probably on Medicaid, the state giving health insurance, or maybe were they on their own personal private plan? And because sometimes, you know, one of the things that I used to see when my son was younger, they would always just basically give us albuterol and never really run any tests. And one of the things that I heard while I was waiting at the doctor's office one time was somebody asked about an EKG and a stress test for their heart. And the doctor told them that they wouldn't give them the approval unless they had pain in their neck and they were showing stroke symptoms. So I was just wondering, you know, what is the testing being done to prevent reoccurring asthma attacks? And as far as my brother up there talking about, you know, fear-based, we can't be afraid of what's coming. We all have to stand together and stop talking down to one another and start preaching education. You're a doctor. We need more people like you in the community. We need more representation and examples of doctors. We have images of hip hop, entertainers, and things like that, but we don't have images of positive doctors. That was killed in '68, and no one's brave enough basically to stand up and take that stance again. So basically I'm just saying, you know, I think education is what's gonna get us through these next 4 years, and you know, we have to preach to these youngsters on how the system is working. You know, I think that the public school system has let a lot of us down, and with COVID, a lot of these babies is really, really behind. So, you know, I think that, you know, looking over this room, we're all mature people. I don't think there's probably anyone under 50. So the young people aren't.
I'm under 50.
Well, okay, all right. I'm sorry, 40. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm just proud to be 50 because I came from the hood and I didn't say I was gonna be that. So I like to throw that 50 out sometimes. But, you know, it's like the word is not getting to the kids. And years ago, I used to do community radio, and the lady over here, Lady D on the end over there, she does community radio also. So I think those instruments are the things that need to be used to get to our youth.
Is it on 5 areas? So healthcare, education is one, criminal justice, economics, and housing. Because those things are all linked. So when you think about access to healthcare, that's also linked to education as well, having access to adequate education. And to answer your question about, you know, the financial status of the children here, I don't have that data, but I think one of the biggest things that you talked about is having access to quality health care, and that's really the one of the main issues as well. It's not just, you know, having health care, but having access to equitable quality health care for all citizens. Okay. Did you still want to make a comment?
Well, I want to know, what's the plan? What is the plan?
Okay.
What is step one? You know, I mean, we can talk all day, but what is the plan?
So, in the early, when I opened up the session, I talked about the commission was seated in 2023. In May of 2023, our task is to do research and investigate harms that were conducted by the city that impacted those 5 areas that I talked about. So we need to provide evidence that things like city policy of redlining led to lack of access to health care and health disparities that we see, etc. Same thing for criminal justice, same thing for housing. And so that's the part that we are in the middle of trying to conduct at this point, because we have to have those facts to back up what the recommendations are. But a huge point of this is that we as a commission don't want to just sit in a room and do this by ourselves and come up with what we think the recommendations are. The recommendations should come from the community to tell us, these are the things I know, these are the things I experienced, this is how I think the city may or may not be linked, and these are the repairs that we think should occur. You know, repairs could be very broad, or they should be very broad. It's not just economic or funds. There are lots of other things that can be done around the city. What healthcare facilities are in neighborhoods? What neighborhoods look like? What infrastructure is there? How are you preventing pollution in areas where there's been over pollution? So we want those recommendations to come from the community.
Hello, I wanted to add to what you were saying. I think when I hear the plan, what the plan is, there's a lot of grants available, but a lot of people don't have access and know how to access it, but for the community to apply for it. So that's like the foundation centers offer a whole bunch of different things, the NIH, and just the government in general. Every government official has grants available. Unfortunately, majority of the people who know about those grants are practitioners who are not of color, more so are doing research, and it's not going back to our community, but there is funding out there. Foundation centers, if you go to the library, and they're looking for people who are interested in creating programs. So that's something I wanted to add, like different programmings that are available for funding. And there's thousands and millions of dollars, but are just not going to us. So I just wanted to state that there is money out there.
That's a beautiful point, and I just want to make it clear that reparations is not charity. It's a debt owed. So the city of Kansas City is culpable and needs to repair, not through charity. We're not saying that charity doesn't have a place in the reparations movement, and we're grateful for all hands on deck. But we just have to be clear that it's a debt owed. It's not charity. And I wanted to just enlighten you all, because we didn't discuss a timeline. So when at least I don't know if that happened before I came. When the Mayor's Commission was seated last May, the timeline was 18 months. But they were seated without funding. So they just got funding, I believe it was May of this year. So I know that they are going to be requesting to have that timeline extended. So just to give you an idea of that 18 months, I don't know how much longer it would take for those proposals. But also just to encourage you all that reparations is a national and an international movement. And Evanston, Illinois is the first city to pass tax-funded reparations, so they are a model to show us that reparations is possible. And actually, Evanston is not the first incident of reparations. We can go back to the 1800s with Belinda Sutton. She was the first to get reparations from her enslaver. So it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And we do need you all, the public, engaged in every aspect of the process of this journey to developing these proposals. One example that was lifted up for health is Black women dying at an increased rate than others, ethnic groups. So like that is a program that could be developed to support Black women in childbirth. That could be repaired. So just thinking about the current conditions and what we could do to turn those conditions around for the African American population here in Kansas City.
This is specifically, I guess, towards the director or the writer. I know that filmmaking is a way for African Americans to conserve history, especially since a lot of our history records have been destroyed. So we tend to get things to insurance records. But I know filmmaking is a part of that process. I guess for me, I was kind of wondering through the film, what was your biggest challenge as you were writing this and producing it? And kind of how are you able to overcome it, especially since there are individuals in this room that are a part of that living history, and you were able to find individuals as well.
Yeah, I would just say that that as a whole, we filmed at the Bruce R. Watkins Center here in Kansas City, and that helped us a great deal because it kind of based us within the community. So we learned about a lot of folks from being there. So folks would come in and go, oh, someone else that has a story is so-and-so, and so my grandmother has a friend that knew Dr. Perry, and so that really helped a lot, because it was hard to find those folks individually. I mean, it was hard for us as filmmakers to know where to go and who are these people, who's still living that witnessed this and experienced it, was part of it. So you have to kind of get lucky, but you get lucky by being connected to the community. I mean, the luck happens. It's not really luck, but it is kind of word of mouth, and the word of mouth can really work well for you if you kind of find a good source. And Bruce R. Watkins really helped a great deal. In terms of probably the hardest part of the film, there was no real history that I could start with to say, this is the story. So I had to kind of discover the story as we were making it. And in filmmaking, typically you want the plan to make the film before you make it. So the only plan I had was, I knew that there were these 2 hospitals, and that was kind of all I really knew. And then everything kind of was revealed to us as we made it. And when you can make a movie like that, it's great, because you kind of develop it as you develop the movie as it's being revealed to you. And so we could change things and seek things out and get answers to things as we were making it. And that's also a bit of a challenge, because you can miss stuff that way. And then after you get in the editing room and you look at the film and you go, oh, I wish we would have asked this. I wish we'd have known about this. I wish, that kind of thing. So, but as a whole, I felt like we got pretty lucky. And finding the map was great, because I kind of think this is the deal. The term redlining, I think that term comes from the pencil that they used on those maps. So the pencil, the red line was on the map, and it's like that's where the term redlining. Maybe you guys knew that, but I was kind of like, wow, we've discovered something here. And the great thing is that you discover people like Dr. Perry and Dr. Unthink, and these people who have kind of been forgotten, I think, who really need to be celebrated. When we could find their voices and find documented things they said, that argument that they had with Jabez Jackson, the Dr. Jackson, and that was documented. That was in something I found at the library. And so that was really, I mean, those are the things you kind of live for when you make these kind of, tell these kind of stories, because it's all about finding the actual history and finding the actual voices and what they said, how they felt. And then you know, we were able to find a couple people that knew them, which was really kind of amazing. I mean, this is a long time ago, and we still were able to find them.
Thank you. I have one other question or kind of comment to that. So one of the things that we've talked about some in the commission is, you know, one part of reparations could be making sure that our history is known. Like you mentioned, you know, there's a rich history of medicine within Kansas City that I don't think most people in Kansas City know. As a pediatrician, I learned about Dr. Perry because he helped to bring one of the first pediatric wards for Black children in the United States. It was called a model ward, where other people came here and learned about how to do pediatrics and how to build a ward to treat Black children. There was one bed in Kansas City. We talk about the 5 beds. There was one bed for Black children in Kansas City that was funded by a donor. It was a specific bed that Black children could be treated on at the white children's hospital at the time. And so I think one of the important things to think about as reparations, in my opinion, is making sure that we have the funding to support these stories being told widely throughout the community.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the things that I picked up from making the film too, that I think connects to all that, is that Alvin Brooks and some other people who we interviewed talked about this in terms of that period, that segregation period specifically. That you know, the problem with integration was that we integrated with whites, but whites didn't integrate with us. And so you look at those institutions that were alive at that time. I mean, Wheatley might have been struggling, but it was still a hospital. It was still functioning, had doctors, nurses. And so when integration happens, all those institutions were kind of abandoned. And what should have happened was whites should have started going to Wheatley. And Blacks should have gone to the other hospital, and Wheatley should still be existing today. And the money should have gone both ways. And the fact that we abandoned all those institutions that kept us alive during this horrible period is, I mean, when you look at, that was the thing I kind of discovered from the documentary. When you go to 18th and Vine and you have to revitalize 18th and Vine, it's because 18th and Vine, you know, was an amazing history, that all these great institutions that were there. And then when integration happened, we left those institutions. And it's not that integration shouldn't have happened, but integration should have happened both ways. And that's the conversation that's why we're having to have reparations now. Because it didn't go both ways. It just went one way, took all the resources from the Black community, those institutions died, and then Black people suffered again because those institutions weren't around. So that was a big revelation for me.
Doesn't that continue today? Pretty much every phase. No, I just want to say that.
I just want to say real quick, what the gentleman here mentioned, the next 4 years, it goes to what you were saying about the history and how important it is, because obviously there's been an attack on our history. And I would probably predict, you have to be Nostradamus to figure this one out, that the attack's going to get a lot worse. And it's going to be really important for us it's going to be a fight over our history. And I would probably predict even a program like this is going to be attacked. And so the thing about history, because I write every day about this, a lot of different stories, is that if you don't know the history, you really can't move forward. Right? And the history's not being taught in school. At KU where I teach, all my classes were an elective, weren't required. So students could go through 4 years of college, never have a Black history class, never understand any of the things we're talking about here. And one of the things I think we're seeing right now is the repercussions of people not knowing this history. And we're all kind of suffering now because especially young people don't know this history. And so what you're doing is incredibly important.
I've got a lot of comments and I'm not sure how to put them all together, but when you were talking about housing and zip codes and redlining, I wonder if your study factors in gentrification or addressing gentrification, if that is a factor. When I was at the Nelson Atkins for Juneteenth, there were different groups trying to get a conversation going about race in Kansas City. They were giving away books. The book by Ibram, forget his name. Yeah, X, stamped. They were giving those books away. And there was a pamphlet by another organization that showed two women, cartoon drawings, two women pregnant at the same time. One woman had a nice home, worked, I guess, from home, drove to wherever she needed to go, had spa day, you know, living pretty well. Next to her was another lady, again, pregnant at the same time, but she had to ride the bus everywhere she needed to go. She didn't get a spa day. She got a second job and that kind of thing. And so to that, I just like to say that stressed women sometimes have stressed children. So that is the generational thing. And to this gentleman's comment about education, that would be lovely. But it started in Florida, and I think Missouri is kind of like in a neck and neck race to see just how backwards we can be. I know they have this Dolly Parton library that's coming up. You know, she donated here, but the governor took pictures and that was about it. So I'd like to know where that goes. But seniors aging in place, we just passed a proposition to add 5 cents to our property tax to provide things that were already being provided in Missouri. But the governor, who is leaving, crossed those lines off the budget. And now we're being asked to fund it, but they were already funded. Another thing I wanted to bring up is if you've ever been in the inner city, there are a lot of vegans and people that do their own gardening. They're popping up all over the place. There are even people who are making gardens in their whole front yard. But then again, you go to other places, and there was an article about a young mother whose sons were getting sick and having headaches, but that was because she bought property from the city, I think the land bank, and had lead in the dirt that the kids were playing in. So if we're gonna start building houses, let's do the groundwork, test the soil, blah, blah, you know, and we've got our other problems with homelessness. And again, that goes to gentrification. So, another thing I did wanna say, a comment I wanted to make. I think you said you were a nurse.
I'm a physician.
A physician, sorry. And our Mayor Pro Tem, her background was in healthcare. I think she was a nurse. Patty Lewis ran for office. She's a nurse. And there are a lot of nurses that are getting into politics now too, so maybe that's a good thing. And one other thing. I also, from several years back, read articles about doctors establishing dialysis treatment centers in black neighborhoods or in and around hospitals in low-income areas. And we are just prey, P-R-E-Y, it seems. So, yeah, so reparations are needed to fix all of that. And amen.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. As we see this video, also wondering, are there going to be other documentaries that are talking about the other things, such as the education piece that we were talking about, the other things that are going to be happening as it relates to reparations, but also what's the dissemination plan to make sure more people see it? Because we're in this space, but the people who need to see it are not in the space. So what is the plan to disseminate this information? Because a lot of people do need to know this history. I'm not from here, but hearing the history, it's like I want to hear more. I want to know more, and also want to do more of my own research. So what is the plan to disseminate more information so that way people know?
Is that documentary online? Like, can we access it online?
Yes, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyone can view Professor Willmott's documentary. It's, readily available on YouTube. But getting back to the dissemination plan, that is something that we've discussed as a commission, that, we want to make sure that we disseminate our findings, our report. But I think, like one of the things you said was, are there documentaries about education within Kansas City? Are there documentaries about how wealth has been passed or not passed within Kansas City? So I think that's a really good point of how do we document kind of what's happened and make that part of the reparations as well.
Good evening. I just wanted to there was a comment just made about are there any other listening sessions going on? I'm a member of the commission, and I'm on the education subcommittee. And the education subcommittee is having a listening session this Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. It will be at the Paseo Academy for the Arts Auditorium, 4747 Flora Avenue, so right up the street here. And that listening session will be a presentation by a couple of educators in this community, Queen Mother Argy Ballard and Dr. Kevin Willmott will be giving a presentation on the African-centered schools that were very successful for about 20 years here in Kansas City. And there will be a discussion. There will be a discussion about that school in terms of its successes, but also in terms of the challenges that are presented to its continued existence, and how that relates to the process of reparations and repair for harms. So let me repeat that again. It's this Saturday, the 16th, 1 to 3 p.m. It will be at the Paseo Academy for the Arts, which is 4747 Flora, right up the street.
Most of our subcommittees meet monthly. Those are open to the public over Zoom. If you go to the website, that was the QR code was up earlier. that will take you to our Zoom link where you can join any of our subcommittee meetings. And again, we really want the public's input on those meetings as we do our work and discuss what our plans are. So with that, I don't want to keep us too long, but I want to make sure we hear from our chair of the commission. But you have a comment first. This will be our last comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. What he was talking about, the Bullards and African Center Education School. I taught there for 4 years, wood shop, and with the kids. And my first time teaching, I was a contract teacher and there and stuff. I was like, why am I a teacher here? You know, God has a funny way of getting you back and stuff. But I learned more about African education during the 4 years I was there than anywhere else before. You know, my history, Southwest High School, originally from Chicago, learned about that and stuff. But after seeing our young, mostly living in predominantly white neighborhoods, you know, family thinks that you're doing your kids justice by putting them in white neighborhoods and going to white schools and stuff. Sometimes it is. For me, it wasn't. And seeing everything that's going on with this, you know, worked with Kevin on 2 films. I knew nothing about this. Knew nothing about this at all. Truman, whatever. Didn't even have an idea. I knew about the red line, but from them, what there was people was doing to us and stuff, knew nothing about this. The education part of it, I've learned through the Bullards, is very important for our young people. I started a nonprofit. It's called Stay in Your Lane. We teach kids real life skills. We take shuttle buses and full-size buses, make tiny homes out of them, an office. Y'all will be seeing the Children's Place, the van that they have right now. Me and another young lady built that bus. It's a therapy bus for kids. It has solar, heated floors, mini split air conditioner, 6,000 watt battery backup, all right there. And teaching kids, and at the other half of teaching kids automotive in there and stuff. So if we get the reparations, yeah, everybody wants some money out of it, but what do we do with it? You know, we have to invest it in back. Heard the one lady in the back talking about building building garden stuff. That's all fine until your neighbor next door is fertilizing theirs and making green grass and it gets into your food, you know? So buy some property. Buy some property outside the city and, you know, put your garden there. Put some tiny homes there. I got 8 acres in Warrensburg and stuff. So all the stuff that we're hearing is good. And the education part of it, you know. I see this makes me even more want to know about, you know, our history in Kansas City. A lot of us being hidden. But we can do a lot, you know, right here. Everybody that's here can do a lot. You know, I didn't have much and stuff, but you can do a lot with little. A little bit can go a long ways. The first thing is you start teaching these kids, especially these boys. You know, teaching these boys. A lot of those boys, we didn't know what a wrench was, a screwdriver, couldn't turn a socket, didn't know a 3/8 from a 9/16 to a 5/8 and stuff. Now they do. Hey, the girls and stuff that was in there. So yeah, this is real good. But if we don't do nothing with it, like you said, the next 4 years, we'll be worse off than we are now.
Thank you all for coming out. Although we've been seated for almost 1.5 years. Oh, I'm Terry Barnes. I'm the chair of the Mayor's Commission on Reparations. And although we've been seated for over 1.5 years, we were just funded this year, and today I saw the request for proposal for us to hire our investigator. So when you think about the work that we have to do in all 5 of those harm areas, we need somebody who can come in and work with us and work with the community to help us know where to point. What we owe the city is a report at the end of this period that says how the city's policies, practices, and habits contributed to or maintained some of the harms that we have in our community. So we are just getting started. We're not in the middle of the work. We are just getting started. We need to hire archivists. We're going to hire historians. We're going to talk to hear more of the oral stories from people who are in Kansas City that can speak to those different harm areas. So thank you all for coming. We meet every month. The full commission meets every month. Each subcommittee, this is just the health subcommittee. So what you see here, we hope that you have similar experiences in all of those other subcommittees, because we have to dig in and find out where those challenges are and how we got to kind of where we are today. So kcmo.org is on the city's website. Go to Reparations. You'll have links to all of the meetings. You will see a org chart of all of the commissioners, including all of the heads of our subcommittees. And we welcome and invite your engagement, because we won't be able to do this work without having the full support of our community. So thank you again for coming.
Thanks everybody for coming. And then I wanted to make sure to thank SWOPE for hosting us. Thank SWOPE and their staffs for supporting us in doing this really important conversation. I think we all know that SWOPE serves a really important part in the community and in the Black community, and I think this is just one other piece of it in allowing these types of conversation and work to occur. So we really appreciate that. So thank you all. Thank you, Professor Willmott, and you all have a good night.